Here we are. Here we are. It's been a long time. We took a break over the summer, and everybody's kind of coming out of hibernation, of isolation. It's great to see Ryan out in the great outdoors, squeezing in this conversation in the midst of the life we're all living, trying to pack in everything as much as possible, but I appreciate it. Today we have a big treat because Ryan Gielen is one of the busiest people right now as the documentary My Beautiful Stutter has just kind of broken into outer orbit, and we'll talk about that. But Ryan is the co-founder and chief creative officer at Believe Limited. It's a production company based in Los Angeles. His producing credits include this new documentary, My Beautiful Stutter, with executive producers Mariska Hargitay, Peter Hermann, Paul Rudd, and George Springer. Some of you know all those people. Some of you might know Paul Rudd. Others might know MLB center fielder George Springer, and his other credits include documentary Bombardier Blood from executive producer Alex Borstein. It is super exciting because this movie, if you want to explain, Ryan, I'm going to just pass to you to give a little intro on what do people not know about you, and what do I mean when I say that this film has just reached outer orbit.
Thank you. Thanks for the intro. So My Beautiful Stutter is about 1 year in the life of 5 young people who stutter. They range in age from 9 years old to 18 years old. And it follows them at different stages of participating in SAY programming. And SAY obviously is the Stuttering Association for the Young. The youngest person we follow, Malcolm, I catch him a few months before he starts doing anything with SAY. He's deep in the midst of struggling tremendously with his stutter and with his classmates and teachers and the world's reaction to his stutter. He's only 9 at the time when I start following him as he enters SAY programs, and that ranges all the way up to Sarah, who is 17 when I start following her, or 16 when I start following her. She's been doing SAY for years, and the purpose of the film is to track what seems to me to be the impact of a revolutionary concept, which is what happens in the life of a young person if the prism through which they think about stuttering is it's okay to stutter. And it's a simple concept. It's a very simple question, but from my point of view, it's revolutionary because so much of a young person's life when they stutter or they have speech difficulties, so much of their life is focused on, and there's so much outside pressure to quote unquote fix the stutter. And I think psychosocially that can cause so many other challenges and problems that it was really fascinating to me, not being a person who's fluent, being a person who had no relationship with stuttering, to walk into this world and see there's the way it's been done for centuries and the way it could be done, and try to bring a camera in to focus on that question, on that difference of how different can a young person's life be if they actually start to believe it's okay that they stutter. And so that's the focus of the film. And it's 90 minutes. It went to film festivals and won some awards. And it now is available through Discovery Channel on Discovery Plus in the US, and then through other television networks and streamers all over the world. Yeah, that's been the journey for the last 6.5 years. 6.5 years ago, I started making the film. And it took 2 years to film, 2 years to edit, 2 years in film festivals, and then Discovery picked it up finally, and now it's out in the world.
Well, it's out in the world, it's around the world, and when I said like getting into outer, orbit, for those that know, for those that don't know, you might say to yourself, it took 6 years, like for 90 minutes. Like, yeah, there are many components that go into making the film that you see, any film you see, but certainly a film of this caliber, and certainly from our experience as well, in terms of making a documentary, Transcending Stuttering, and every other film that's been made, films like When I Stutter or The Way I Talk. These are all fantastic documentary films. This film is unique because I don't think any of the others reached outer orbit in the sense of getting that global attention and distribution. So that is a massive achievement. Many people, well, few people take their creative talent and put something out as substantial as any of the films I've mentioned or this film, My Beautiful Stutter. But very, very few manage to get into the distribution circles and channels. And that's why it's exciting to promote this film, not only for its substance stands and speaks for itself, but also the opportunity to really spread the message of the film, of what Ryan poured into it, and obviously the way it showcases the amazing work of the Stuttering Association for the Young, which is active on the ground in New York, in DC, in Australia, founded and led by our good friend Taro Alexander. Today, leadership includes Noah Corman and Travis Roberts, among others, all outstanding human beings doing epic frontline work, changing the lives of young people who stutter. And one cannot forget a shout out to my favorite Say person, Everett Bradley. It's hard to imagine what Say would be without any of these people, but Everett Bradley brings, there's only one guy that could dress the way he does, jam the way he does, and just pull it all together in such a professional and personable way. But big shout out to all our friends at Say. So that's a little Say promo, and a big shout out to you. Again, like, distribution is a really big deal. How many people want to see a film about people who stutter? Well, Discovery decided this had traction, this had legs, this was worth it. And so I encourage everybody to show Discovery they made a good decision. So whether it's in your school, your community, it's a great conversation piece. It's a great public advocacy piece. It's substantial. And if it reaches one person, it changes their perspective as part of this shift from let's fix kids who stutter, let's fix stuttering. And it just gets someone to realize, wow, look what happens to a kid early on, as early as possible, when the messages that are sprinkled into them are like, you're perfect, just the way you are. And the way you talk, oh, okay, yeah, it's okay to stutter, and you're not alone. And shout out again to all the organizations and people that are part of this tapestry and fabric of the stuttering community. It'd be interesting to hear from Ryan what he walked into to discover there's like a whole world, you know, when you pull back the layers and you realize that behind the curtains of isolation and people living in shame, people living feeling like there's no one else that gets it, there's actually a whole world of connectivity. Say is one of the big players in that space, but there's so many others. So it'll be fascinating. So through this conversation, we'll talk about how Ryan, a guy who doesn't stutter, found himself here, what he discovered, what he learned, what are the important takeaways for people who stutter, for people who care about people who stutter, and maybe what's real exciting to me is Transcending Stuttering, the title of this podcast, the title of the documentary. I've referred to this before, that Dan Greenwald, a person who stutters and a dear friend and soul brother, has often said there's this double entendre, like transcending stuttering means let's go beyond the stuttering. Like, it's not all about stuttering, it's about the people. But even beyond that, I think those of us that don't stutter have so much to learn, to be inspired, and to truly gain from the lived experiences and examples of people who stutter, and by connecting ourselves with them. We have so much to learn and to gain. So I'll let you start where you want. Like, where does the story begin? Where do you come on scene? You've got this Los Angeles production company. Taro's based in New York. Camp Say at that time, I don't know if it was in North Carolina or somewhere else in the mountains.
North Carolina.
Yeah. Where do you enter stage left? Like, how did this come to be? What was that first starstruck moment?
Yeah. So I had made some small independent films that were narrative films, so not documentaries. And a producer saw one and said, why don't you come with me to the Say Gala? I think there might be a film in there somewhere. So just as sort of like an exploratory experience, you know, as a producer I liked, a Broadway producer, Michael Alden, he produced The King's Speech on Broadway and on the West End in London. So he had a relationship to Say and the stuttering community. He said, why don't you come to the Say Gala? I think this is in 2014, and just see if there's if something sparks for you. And so I remember I was expecting something, you know, touching and fine, and to maybe donate some money and just, you know, have an evening. But that evening changed my life, and it started, you know, it took about 2 minutes to change my life, because what happens at the start of the Say Gala, at least in this one, all these people come in dressed to the nines. It's this gorgeous theater in downtown New York, Skirball Theater at NYU. the lights go down, everybody's dressed beautifully, 500 people filling out this auditorium, single spotlight on stage, and this little boy, 8 years old, walks out on stage clutching a piece of paper, and he reads from the piece of paper. And it's silent. You can hear a pin drop, and he just says, "Thank you for coming to the 2014 SAY Gala." And when he was done, it took about 20 seconds to say it because he was stuttering. And when he was done, there was silence. And after a few seconds, this standing ovation just took over the theater. There's this wave of people standing up, clapping, just washed over him. And you could see him grow a foot in that moment. He grew a foot. He levitated off stage. And I realized, this may be obvious to you and to your listeners because you all have been in this world for a while. But in that moment, I had the light bulb of the reason he was silent, waiting to see what would happen when he finished speaking, is because he's used to, when he finishes speaking, he's used to people laughing. He's used to hearing little comments from around the room, people shifting uncomfortably, people making fun of him, teachers, kids, adults, But instead, the standing ovation for him speaking with a stutter, proudly and confidently, with a stutter, instead of trying to mask it or push it back or waiting until he could get a single word out and then waiting until he gets that, but just being confident. It was so telling about what his life journey must be like, that it was just like this thunderbolt moment for me. And the rest of the night reinforced that. The stories that were told about, the journey of a young person who stutters for the rest of the night, I left that night feeling like I had to do something, like I had to take my camera and go do something on behalf of these young people.
Can I
And so
interject
it
at
took
that?
about, yeah,
I
please.
want to just, first of all, I just looked it up. I was there 2014. Wasn't that when Bill Withers got up and sang Lean On Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Bill Withers was there too, and John Scully. But certainly, what's beautiful about the gala is it's when it's the spotlight on the kids. Something you said struck me. You said at the beginning it was the night that changed your life. And as much as that kid grew a couple feet, it kind of echoed to me what I was saying before. The surprising thing is how much we have to gain from each other. Like everyone in that room, every person that stood up gave that kid an inch. Every person that applauded gave that kid another inch. And so, like, there was this flow of energy that was going towards the stage to this kid. And his life was touched and changed and altered by people that don't even know him, just taking the time to, like, get off their tuchus, put down their phone, and give him the attention and applause he deserved. But you also said it changed your life. And that's that, kind of like reverb, you know, that reciprocity. Can you talk about like what did it do for you? What hit you? What was that feeling as you think back? Because I know that was always the highlight of my year. It was one of the moments I looked forward to get juiced for the next year of my work of dedication and devotion to people who stutter, their families, and therapists that are looking to do better for people who stutter. So I kind of know what it does for me, but I was curious, like if you could tap into and describe for us, what was that feeling that washed through you?
It took me 5 years or 6 years. It took me until I was doing Q&As at film festivals after finishing the film to really understand what had happened that night. And I was going to speak to a group of, we were honored as the Inspire screenings at the Napa Valley Film Festival. And so they would show our documentary to about 500 kids at a time. They did 3 groups of about 500 kids in the Northern California area. And going into that, I realized I was asking the kids in the audience to be pretty vulnerable to connect with this film. And it would probably bring up some things for these kids, right? Every kid in that audience has insecurities. And to sit in that room and hear that the kids on screen in the documentary talk about their insecurities, I just realized I was asking a lot of young people to be very vulnerable. So I started trying to put myself in their shoes. And I had this light bulb moment of, I think one of the biggest reasons that the 2014 SAY Gala, those opening moments, I was hooked from that and was willing to give 6 years to this project is because, and it took so long to put my finger on this, but when I was a kid, I was bullied for being fat. And I don't use that word lightly. I use it very, very specifically here because that's the word that was used to make me feel less than for years, for probably 3 or 4 years straight, until I got good at sports and was able to kick a little butt. But that's a side story. But it was used to
Either
make
you
me
go to
feel
Camp
less than.
Say or you get good at sports. Those are two tickets for any young person. For boys,
Absolutely.
that really is truly a ticket out of,
Yeah.
social ridicule and bullying. Yeah.
Absolutely. You become aware of what you actually are capable of and how false the stories are that people are telling about you, right? Your own narrative you realize is false when you get good at sports or music or writing or art, like when you find the thing that sparks for you. But I remember one time I had a really terrible, terrible day, week, month, whatever. And I had this meltdown and I went to the school therapist. I think I was 10 years old and I was crying and I said, they won't stop making fun of me for being fat. And she said, have you tried eating more fruits and vegetables? Now I know that that's hyper specific to a weight or body image thing, but think about it for a second. She was saying, how can we fix you? Not they're wrong. You are worthy of love and friendship and kindness and empathy. How do we fix you? And that is exactly, excuse me, that is exactly what young people often hear if a parent reacts to their stuttering by let us fix this stutter. And it took me so long to put a finger on how much I identified with that 8-year-old kid in the middle of the stage. All I knew was on a visceral level, I wanted to take my camera, whatever money I could put together, whatever energy I could give to this, and fight on behalf of that kid and all the kids in Say and all the young people who stutter in the country and in the world. I just wanted to go fight on their behalf, and my tool is a camera. And it took so long to really dig into why that was. And it's because no matter what's going on, we have this tiny, tiny little funnel that we try to shove every young person through. And that funnel is normal. And if you have anything outside of that little tiny tunnel, you are made to feel less than to varying degrees and by different people and different structures and whatever. But the idea that we try to funnel young people into normal instead of destroying that tunnel entirely is really problematic. So I set out to make a movie that not only would tell young people who stutter, you are worthy of love and friendship and kindness and joy and enjoying every single life experience at your age, no matter what, not only to talk to them, but hopefully, and this is why I'm so thrilled that someone like Discovery Channel came along and got it, but to hopefully speak to people like me and people like my friends who have gone their entire lives thinking they've never met anyone who stuttered and that disfluency is a problem to be fixed. I wanted to reach anyone who might encounter people who stutter and not just people who stutter with the film. That was my hope.
You're doing it. You're doing it. So it sounds like there was this human message of like it took a while, but you realized that something about this kid standing up there with, as you said, the expectation or anticipation. It could be that he didn't even get laughed at or ridiculed other times, but it could be that that was something that in his mind he anticipated, that it wasn't something he could ever possibly do. And he's standing there waiting for, what's the world going to tell me? And all kids are listening, right? To what the world's, you're a dad of young people. I'm a dad of 4 young people. They're looking at us, and it's less about what we say. It's more about what we do and that micro expressions and nonverbal messages. Does our jaw drop when they drop the milk or when they have a misstep or they misspell something or miscalculate something or have a little hiccup in their speech? How do we message to them that they're perfectly perfect, perfectly whole, even in those moments where they make mistakes? I love it. And I think I didn't grow up with the experience you grew up with. Um, I had other experiences that definitely pale in comparison, but for me, they were my Mount Everest. And all of us know that feeling of not fitting in some way, somehow, some degree. And to us, it was the biggest thing in the world. Even if to someone else, like, oh, you had it easy, buddy. Okay, we can each honor each other's experiences. But that's what I was saying before. I think that kid standing up there, he is showcasing the best of humanity. And the question is, as you said, what were the ingredients that went into that moment, that led up to that moment of that kid taking center stage, taking the mic and doing his thing? you know, and the courage. I keep coming back to Dan Greenwald. We went to NSA this summer in Austin, Texas, and he spoke about the courage muscle and that the human creature power is courage in the face of fear. We can transcend fight flight. That kid had the fight flight, and he just stood there and he was present. And there was a community of people in the audience that gave space, held space, and gave him a big fat high five. And like you said, he walks different leaving the stage. And we walk different. That's the
Mhm.
key. He wakes up that kid inside of us that we wish. So the power of parents and adults, teachers being champions for young people. The research is incredible that the difference between an underprivileged kid from some place with everything stacked against him, the difference between that kid or some kid with all the privilege in the world, the difference between anyone becoming a statistic or becoming a success story, the difference is not how much money they have in the bank, what they ate for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's one caring adult. And if you had one caring adult in your life, you're set. You're set. That could be the impact that makes all the difference. So you know, at scale are making that difference, being that champion. What what did you discover after the initial inspiration of seeing that kid take center stage? What did you discover in terms of the different pieces of input that went into that young person and the other young people who really were so exemplary that you were able to follow and meet? Obviously, there's the camp experience. Do you want to just reflect on when you pulled back the curtain and you got into this world? What were some of the incredible gains, assets that you saw from the kids and from the people who put their time, effort, and money into creating opportunities and opening doors for all these youngsters?
I think part of the brilliance of what tarot and say does is their focus on, in many cases, the arts, on self-expression, is really a perfect fit for helping young people who stutter gain self-esteem, gain confidence, and start to believe that it's okay to stutter, because young people in general are much deeper, much more complex than I think we give them credit for in a lot of cases. To say to them, here's art, it's here for you, whether it's writing, painting, performance. um, it's such an immediate way to open a kid up to starting to believe they can express themselves and starting to believe they should express themselves, when so much of their life is other people telling them to shut up, to stop expressing themselves, to hide. It's sort of just an immediate remedy for what the day-to-day experience of a young person who stutters is like. That was very clear to me right off the bat, that that's the brilliance, or at least one of the sort of brilliant things that Say does. um, I think the other thing I saw that fundamentally challenged me to be a better person in all of my interactions is the way that tarot listens to people. You see a lot of this in the film. You see, and especially if you participate in anything with Say, you'll see it firsthand. But the way that tarot stops moving, stops looking around, stops talking, and just stands present when he is engaging with a young person who stutters. Again, I don't mean to overuse this word, but it's revolutionary, because it's not something that any of us are really trained in our lives to do. It's not a practice that is common. It's not a practice that you work on in school. This sort of like active slash passive listening of when a young person speaks, how still can you be? How much eye contact can you give it with an expression? You mentioned expressions and micro expressions, with an expression that says, I'm here, I'm participating, I'm not judging, and you will have the time you need to speak. Um, that was the other thing that challenged me to be a better person and a better listener, because I was so used to communicating with people, excuse me, with people who were fluent. And I was even a teaching artist for 5 years in New York City public schools, where we would go in and teach leadership and self-esteem through arts programs. And I had gotten so comfortable with like being in charge and being a personality to these kids and like showing self-esteem to try and get self-esteem back from them, to try and elicit self-esteem, that I had never stopped to think of how powerful could it be if I said less and did less and just waited and just gave space and created space. And so that was the other sort of magical thing that I saw, and that I hope people recognize it in the film when they watch Taro in the film. I hope people are like, oh, that is how an adult should engage with not just young people with disfluency, but young people, period. And I've tried to incorporate that in my relationships with friends, with colleagues, with my wife, with my kids. It's really, yeah, it's just very moving to me, and I hope other people feel that way too.
I think all they have to do is watch the preview of My Beautiful Stutter, and you can feel how authentic what Ryan is saying comes through, because I watched it prior to this conversation, and it struck me when you got a trailer, you got what, like under 2 minutes. You include in that trailer a young person sitting down at center court at the camp, and the screen just holds space for this kid. You did it through that trailer, you know? I think in a fast-paced world, and I like the word revolutionary because it's counter culture. The world is moving quicker, everything is snappier, there's more things pulling at our attention. All of us have so much on our minds and different devices, whether it's our phones or wearables or whatever, just slicing and splicing our attention. For all young people, and especially someone who stutters, the greatest gift is a little bit more response time, a little bit of putting something on hold, of letting them know they are more important than your step count buzzing or, some other lesser important thing. But otherwise, the message they get is we're so caught up with everything buzzing around us, whether it's tech or other things pulling on our time and attention, kids need to know that they matter. Otherwise, the message they get is all these other things matter more. So I'm right with you. Every time I watch your film, every time I engage with people who stutter and parents, and Taro in particular, Taro, anyone that's been around Taro, I think would agree. They become inspired as to what's possible. Taro and his partner and his entire family and the team at Say are exemplary in that way in terms of how they hold space. And it's not because they don't have energy and they're not jumping beans. Taro is one of the biggest jumping beans I know. All the more credit to him, his ability to hold and give space. And you dropped a little bomb there, which is parents want to hear more about their kids' day at school. People want to have deeper conversations. The more you talk, the less you'll hear from the other person, whether that's because you're caught up in your words or you're filling up the space that you could otherwise share. It's in the silence that a person has an opportunity to take a chance, take a turn. And it's in the silence, whether it's in comedy, film, Barack Obama punctuating his speeches with space and pausing. It's in that space that people do the processing of understanding and listening and taking to heart what you've said. And it's in the space that people have a chance to formulate the best of what they can share and get it out and share it with the world. So best way to get other people talking is to shut up and listen. Very powerful takeaway if you want to take one practical takeaway. So what evolved for you? And I think that was a big part of, you're still not a person who stutters, but how is stuttering kind of woven its way into your work, into your outlook, into the fiber of how you run your family, your business, your life?
I think so. So the young people featured in the film, there's Malcolm, who is 9 years old when I start. Sarah and Emily, who are 15, 16 when I start. Will Davis, who is 18 when I start. He's graduating from SAY and moving on and going to college. Um, and Juliana, who is 15 when I start. The, seeing the diversity in the film, and they all come from different areas of the country, different socioeconomic statuses, different family situations. Seeing the diversity in the film, but in every situation, there is a sincerity and a kindness and talent and depth and like it was such a reminder of what we miss out on when we judge a book by its cover or judge a person by their fluency or disfluency. Every time I would talk to these young people or their families, in some cases their teachers, and this is in the film, I would just be reminded of like how much I've lost out on in life by moving too quickly past a person or past a relationship or past a conversation with someone I think I know or I work with or I'm friends with. It's just slowed me down so much and made me so much more engaged with individuals, right, as opposed to my own schedule. And I'm grateful for that, and I come back to it a lot. It was life changing, and again, I hope that's what people experience when they see the film. I hope so. So one of the things I pitched when I was going out and trying to find money here, or like trying to like patch together funny. That's one of the reasons it took 6 years. I was constantly trying to patch together a little bit more money, a little bit more money, a little bit more money. And it's because one of the reasons it was so hard to raise money is people don't understand what is so pressing and important about this film or about changing how we engage with kids who stutter. But I would say to them, and I still think like this, I would say, if you, let's say you go out to a meeting or you go out to drinks or whatever, and one person around the table has a speech disfluency, let's say they stutter. When you come home that night and you're talking to your wife or your husband and you're like, oh, I had this really interesting meeting, there was someone who stuttered in it, and they kept jumping in and we would have to wait, and you're like talking about stuttering from your point of view. There's never been a film where somebody else around the table will be like, did you see My Beautiful Stutter? It's this documentary about kids who stutter, and it's crazy because you'll never think this, and if you've never seen it, well, you got to see this. That film's never existed. The closest thing we've had is The King's Speech, the movie, or these terrible viral videos that come out of the singing competitions every year, where every year they find a person who stutters, they follow them home, they show them stuttering at home, and then they show them singing beautifully, and that's what gets the applause. The only concept we have until My Beautiful Stutter is that the victory with someone who stutters is when they can be fluent. And that's pop culture's entire prism through which they show stuttering. It's tragic that they stutter, but watch this arc and now they're fluent, and that's the victory. And what that sets up for every person around the world who stutters is you are a tragedy until you're fluent. So when you ask how has stuttering come into and stayed in my life, that is the thing that I hope to change and that I keep engaging with over and over and over again, is I'm trying to engage with popular culture that only knows how to talk about stuttering as a tragedy until someone is fluent, and that's a big victory. And I want to change that. I want the documentary to be the conversation piece instead of the King's Speech or instead of the viral videos that come out of the singing competitions. I want people, when they engage with stuttering, to be like, wait, I just met someone who stutters. I gotta watch the documentary now. That's the thing that I wanted to. I remember now. I wanted to go see that on Discovery Plus, or I wanted to go get that on iTunes. I wanted to watch that film because I do think the more people can see it outside of the stuttering community, the more we can change the prism through which popular culture and culture in general engages with stuttering.
Two subtle corrections. You said you want to do it. Correction, you're doing it. Two, there is, I couldn't agree more, the celebration of people where the story arc is look at them here and look at them now, all fixed up and all polished up. I don't hear any stuttering now. Wow, look, they did it. You could do it too, and you can get your plastic surgery and either cover up or sell out or put on the performance that you think everyone wants to see. But what if you could be that hero just as you are? So the one challenge I'd put out there, and it goes back to the power that you said, the power of the arts and of creative expression. True story from this summer. There was a film So you think you can dance? I don't think I was a candidate. I'm not sure if you were either, but there were some really good dancers, and one guy was Shane Garcia. I don't know if you remember this. This was in 2010, and Shane Garcia was one of those guys. It was a reality, performance show kind of thing, and Shane is followed, like you said, by the cameras, and he stutters beautifully. And we've been saying that before your film, but all the more apropos with the film, My Beautiful Stutter. Just gonna put that in there as many times as we can. And Shane gets up there and he introduces himself. And you see the judges, and one of the judges, power to him, says, I see that you stutter. Take your time. You have as much time as you need, and we're here to enjoy what you have to share with us. And just kind of named the elephant in the room and made it clear that this person should know that what they have to say is going to be given the airtime that it requires, that it deserves. Shane goes on to perform the most emotionally riveting dance I'd ever seen in my life, ever. Bone breaking, animation, there was a whole mix of things, but through his dance, he was expressing both expression, but also the feelings of hurt, the bruises, and the stuckness at times. I followed slash stalked this guy for about 10 years. And then this year it happened that I managed to connect with him. We did a podcast. It's the only podcast where I have dancing. So it's kind of odd to have a podcast where people are dancing, but it happened here on Transcending Stuttering.
It's amazing.
And then I was meeting with a young woman this summer, and she was so in the dumps about her stuttering. I said, "What really gets you? What's your jam? What's your jam? Where do you delight?" She's like, "I love dancing." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. Like, I know a guy who's like a super successful dancer and he stutters quite nicely. Would you like to speak to him?" She's like, "Oh, that'd be amazing." More because he was on So You Think You Could Dance. She wasn't really ready to engage on the stuttering level, but suddenly her stutter and his stutter became a card of access, kind of like these kids with Paul Rudd being interested in stuttering because of his performing history, George Springer, and other stars who stutter today and stutter openly and are great role models for young people. Anyway, I send him a DM and he's like, "Yeah, I'm available." And right there on the spot, Shane Garcia jumps on and we do a live video chat. And what that did for this young person was not all that different than that little boy on that stage. And I think connecting the dots, giving people role models, seeing that they can make it, like you're saying, whether it's seeing it on the big screen or connecting with these super individuals and role models. Side plug, totally just kind of came to mind. We are working on creating a community of peers and mentors that would be open for teens and open for adults and also for speech language pathologists. You can hit us up on transcendingstuttering.co to sign up for like early access to that. But the idea of getting it on the screen is like one level. The next level would be some sort of live experience, maybe going to a camp. Another opportunity would be having some direct contact, whether it's email correspondence or a video chat or asynchronous WhatsApp or something. But realizing there are role models out there that have stood in your shoes truly and can show you that it's possible. And the things you're dreaming of don't need to be extinguished, and you don't need to sell out in order to achieve those dreams. Again, we live in a time where the President of the United States is a person who grew up with a stutter. And at the age of 16, as you were bullied, as you said, he was bullied for being a person who stutters. His nickname was Dash, not because he was so fast, but because he spoke like Morse code. So I think what you said is awesome. Awesome. What, from all the experiences you just mentioned, any specific tips, suggestions for people who are speech language pathologists for young people in the schools or teachers in the classrooms? Being an outsider, but also someone involved in the arts, involved in education, and having embedded yourself and really committed yourself to being such a champion. What are some takeaways you might offer for the teachers out there and the speech therapists out there?
I've been really, really honored and flattered and like overjoyed with the SLP reaction to the film. Ash has been a huge supporter. Excuse me, Asha has been a huge supporter. Nisla has been a huge supporter. I think of the 250, 275 screenings we've done, half of those have been with SLP groups all over the country, or SLP practices, even individual practices have like booked screenings of the film. At first it was in person and then virtually, and like it's just been really, really cool to see and to get to know SLPs and how genuine and sincere they are about trying to make life better for kids who stutter, kids with disfluency. Like I didn't know anything about them. Even after making the film, my only impression was that a lot of young people had struggled with their SLP because of the feeling of, they're trying to fix me. And I think that was just a more common thing for me to hear about, because you don't hear as much about the SLPs that are doing a great job or giving space or whatever. I was only hearing sort of the downside. So I just want to start out by saying, I don't speak SLP. I don't have, in the 6 years that I was working on
Me
the film,
neither.
I didn't.
I'm still trying to figure out how to talk. I don't talk SLP either.
So I apologize in advance if this isn't sort of based in the lingo or in the training or in the philosophy. What I come back to all the time is every young person I spoke with and got to know through the process of making the film has a shell that they put up to get through the day. And if their home life is tough, that shell goes up from the minute they open their eyes in bed in the morning to the minute they're able to fall asleep at night. The shell is up, right? And that's common. And that's something I heard over and over and over again, different versions of that. And so the thing that I always try to talk about when speaking with SLPs or SLP groups is, how do you make your practice a place where the shell can come down? If the young person feels like they are being evaluated on every syllable, on every stutter, on every block, on every repetition, and that there's a disappointment or a lack of enjoyment of the time spent together, if the kid isn't moving toward fluency, the shell probably stays up. So how do you, in whatever the proper SLP terminology is or training it, how do you just make it clear that you believe this young person is worthy of the things they probably aren't experiencing, worthy of patience, worthy of empathy, worthy of love, worthy of friendship, worthy of joy? How do you make your practice feel like a place where they are worthy and they are not being judged and are not being, fixed, because that is probably the only thing that will bring the shell down.
I'll just
The
piggyback on
shell
that. For one,
is,
I think to recognize that whether you're a teacher, certainly if you're a person who gets to spend time with a young person in a small setting, let's say a half hour a week or 2 half hours a week, that's such a precious opportunity. And as a classroom teacher, the time you have with that young person in your space is a very impressionable opportunity. And so whatever small steps you can take can have a very life-altering impact, because it just takes, again, one great experience of someone believing in you and messaging to you that you are worth it, that you are great, that you have talent, that you have gifts, that you're celebrated in this space, that you're part of this, you belong here. Those messages are life-changing far more than, and I think to give credit, or at least to the intentions and best intentions of so many therapists out there, the intention is to help someone get out of something that seems challenging, that we wouldn't know how to deal with. But trying to fix it at the surface symptom level does far more harm than good very often. And you have to start inside out, and you have to see people where they're at as human beings. And what everyone needs is to know that they are loved, that they are loved. And the way you do that is you do things that you would do for someone who's an adult. And what you said, Ryan, I totally give credit to tarot. I no longer call kids kids, I call them young people. That's a big taroism. Talking about kids, kiddos, but not just talking about them as young people, treating them as young people with respect, and that they have an opinion, that their voice matters. And when you do that, what you're doing is not only listening to them and treating them the way they should be treated, you're instilling the kind of values that are going to sprout and blossom as a young person, whether they stutter or not, that they will blossom and show the kind of integrity and honesty and personality that they have authentically to bring to the world, as opposed to living some shadow life that they think the world wants to see because the world wouldn't tolerate who they really are. So that's a good one for SLPs.
I just want to piggyback. I'd like to piggyback on your piggyback for just a second.
I got it. I got
It
broad
reminds me
shoulders.
that literally the first day of filming, I was filming Sarah and Emily in a joint interview. And I want to give them credit for fundamentally altering the direction of what I thought I was doing. because in the first interview, 30, 40 minutes into talking to them for the first time ever, these two 15-year-olds were standing across from me, being extraordinarily vulnerable and saying things like, because of the way I'm treated, I wonder if anyone will ever love me the way I want to be loved in a relationship. And I'm getting a little emotional talking about it because I'm standing across from two 15-year-olds that I just met, and I'm asking them to tell me about their lives because I think I can help other young people like them. And what they are saying in order to try and reach other young people like themselves, they don't even care that I'm there. They are hoping that this will translate to reach other 15-year-olds. They're just revealing this extraordinary pain and fear. And as an adult, I know that they can live the most fulfilling lives imaginable. But I'm not going to be able to convince them of that. So it's this helpless feeling. And it just gave me so much fire to want to keep going, to know that if they're saying this, there's thousands of young people who are feeling this way because it takes them a little longer to speak. So Sarah and Emily, that vulnerability fundamentally altered what I was doing for the better because of how sincere and genuine and deep they are. And you were talking a second ago about, like, if you can create this space, you can elicit so much from these young people. And just as yes, and that, we so underestimate the depth and intellect and beauty of what these young people are thinking and feeling, that you can get to that in ways that will change your life, in ways that will shock you, and so I try to talk about that a little bit too, because the young people that participated, this is a perfect example. I asked them at the end of the interview, I said, how should I end the film? If you could wave a magic wand, how should the film end? What would you want the big climax of the movie to be? And Emily looked at me and she goes, I think it should just be a quiet moment where someone is stuttering openly and beautifully, and just let them stutter. And that's how we end the film. Like, Emily told me on day one how to end the film, and that's how we end it. It's Juliana just giving her speech and stuttering openly. And
Juliana,
it was just really,
one of my all-time
yeah,
favorite human beings who I've seen grow up in every sense of the word, through the years and through different opportunities that she's had to shine and participate and give back in the SAY community. Big shout out to her and Emily and
yeah.
Sarah and Malcolm, in addition to the whole team. I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were not done there.
No, no, and I apologize for this. I actually have to hop off at 11.
Yeah,
Um,
we're gonna wrap here. I'm gonna say one more thing, which gives you a chance to think what would be your last parting wisdom that you want to share. But I'll just say this. I think that, to piggyback on your piggyback on my piggyback, which is a piggyback on yours, if SLPs, if teachers, if parents could shift the narrative from forget about being so revolutionary, but if we listen to the stories of people who stutter through the film My Beautiful Stutter, which Ryan so beautifully put into the world, which is now available on Discovery Plus and other avenues through the world. So many other films, Transcending Stuttering, When I Stutter, The Way We Talk. All these documentary films give a window to the public into the inner worlds, inner voices, inner experiences of people who stutter. Those are the greatest opportunities to learn, far more than textbooks alone or research alone could ever inform us. And if you think about, there's a 15-year-old girl out there who thinks no one will ever love me. There's a little boy out there who thinks, I really want to be a lawyer, but I think I'd have to talk a lot. I think I'll get good at math and do like accounting in the basement. So I think the goals we should set, obviously we can try to help people have a space to hear their words, but think big, think long term. How do you help that young person grow up to feel lovable and to know every day that the right person is going to see exactly what makes them so attractive, so beautiful, so charming, so much the person they'd want to spend the rest of their life with, even if their speech has some hiccups. And I think My Beautiful Stutter and ending the film with Juliana like that is, it's both a stutter can be beautiful, but also a person can be beautiful in the midst of imperfection, in the midst of something that might look different or sound different. But our radiance, our humanity can shine no matter what. And I just want to give you a big fist bump and power to you, and encourage everybody to enjoy the film and spread the film, My Beautiful Stutter. And any parting wisdom, what would be like some parting inspirational takeaway that you would like to leave us with this morning?
It's an old cliche, but it's really, really fitting. People, especially young people, usually don't remember what you said, but they remember how you made them feel. And I think SLPs, I know it's a tough position sometimes, because a lot of times you have teachers or principals or school systems or parents breathing down your neck about, hitting certain marks in terms of fixing things. And like, I know it's a tough job and a tough position, but just
It's a
to
great
think about,
position. It's a great opportunity. Just go with the opportunity to
yeah,
make them
to
feel
to
something they're going
really,
to remember.
exactly, yeah.
And if you need help figuring out the part Ryan was saying, the report writing, the goal writing, the paperwork, we got your back. But if we can enlist more people to be agents of change, guides, allies for young people, it's going to make a world of difference for adults. And for any adults out there, as long as you're breathing, there's time in the clock. Everybody has an opportunity to turn a new page. So use the young people as examples of inspiration of anything is possible, but just know it's never, never too late. And thank you, Ryan, for bringing this film to the world. Thanks for taking the time to share this with us. And we'll send some links in the notes. Check out all these episodes on our blog page at schneiderspeech.com/our blog. And you can check out all the other things we're doing for speech language pathologists, for teens who stutter, for adults who stutter, and the podcast continues to go. So we'll be back with some more episodes this season. Thanks again, Ryan, for kicking us off.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to speak with you sincerely, and I really appreciate all the support. Thank you.
Absolutely.